But first, before we get into that, just an update that we're moving forward on the mini-meet planning for October 8th, the second Saturday in October, at a pretty nice facility here in Murfreesboro, just off the interstate. We've got 4 or 5 clinics already in hand, and I think there's a good buzz around the region already based upon a few responses to the ad notice in the recent Southerner that was published. I sent the link to you guys with the last notification for the meeting. So check that out. As an aside, Ed Ware, I think, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He's the editor of the Southerner, and he always needs material. So if you've even got a small article with like 2 or 3 photos and hardly 300 words of text, that works for him. Keep it simple and direct, and you know, for a first piece, that's a good one to start with. Brian has one pretty well along. I helped Dan Cole with one that was in the last issue. These little things, you know, I enjoy writing and expressing my experiences to help other people through things. And it's just, you know, you can also put that towards AP credits, right, George? And
correct.
Yep. And
author credits and volunteer credits. Yep,
moving right through those. So that's another aspect of that. So if you've got something interesting and have some pretty, you know, pretty good photos to share with it, it's pretty easy to write it on up and send it along to Ed. And I'm happy to review a PDF or its original document to help you along with it too. For the mini meet, if you guys know of any possible layouts for a self-guided layout tour on Sunday, please let me or one of the board members know so that we can reach out and firm things up. We'd like to have a few available for people to take a look at and visit as they head home on Sunday. And I suspect we're going to have a lot of local participants, so it'd be neat to have them be able to see some local action here too. Brian, is there anything else that I'm missing, or Jim, anything else I'm missing from the Music City mini meet?
I don't think so.
There are plenty of restaurants in the local area. There won't be any food at the mini meet at all, but we're going to take a break at around lunchtime, and there's lots of little restaurants in the area.
Yeah. Yeah, there's two main strips that are very close to the mini meet location that have just about anything you want. So,
is there one of the restaurants along that strip that has a back room that we don't want to pay a whole bunch of money to reserve it, but where it'd be convenient for a group of people to gather the evening before?
Yeah, I've got to do a little bit more digging there. I know there's a community room at the Panera nearby. I need to check on other options that are in that area. There's about 50 restaurants within a 2-mile radius of that location. And at least 15 hotels. So, yeah, May 15th is the deadline for the next Southerner, and I'd like to be able to, you know, include as much information for publicity splash in that issue. So it'd be good if we can have a bunch of stuff all lined up to share, to raise interest and you know, make some people come here. I also realized we had talked about a website, and I had forgotten that, you know, I host my own domain. We don't need specifically our own domain We just need space. And that's what I did with RPM East. That website is actually a subset of my website. So that is something we can easily do to have an event website in order to enable easier registration and get more information out there too.
I was looking through the recent Southerner, and it looks like we have a whole page of things submitted just from the Cumberland Division, which is, I think, good publicity for us in the region.
That's been one of my goals with each issue. And, you know, whatever you guys contribute for our show and tell photos, they're quality. I mean, they're good enough to send on to Ed for public publishing. So that's what I've been doing, along with some, you know, bare bones captions. And he loves it because, you know, it's content. And it shows that we're active again. And ever since we started meeting informally in 2018, 2019, I've been sending regular updates of our activities. So that's been key to show everyone that something's happening here again. Anything else to bring up?
I guess just kind of an aside, I had a nice visit with George a few days ago. He came over to the house to kind of assess what I'd done and what I might need to do to work on some achievement certificates. And with his encouragement, I don't know if he knew this first one I was going to dive into, but I've been working on scratch building some turnouts.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Jim's got a good layout, and he's well on the way to mostly just meeting a few specific requirements and getting documentation done.
That's right. Sounds good. I know the points are one of the things that always challenged my efforts with scratch building turnouts. I bought some fast tracks fixtures a while back, and they really have helped streamline, you know, my efforts toward making turnouts.
I've got the stock rail and frogs in place.
Yeah.
Now I'm at that next step of the movable points.
Well, good luck there.
It'll happen.
Well, hey, might as well dive into the presentation here today. I want to encourage our members to create their own presentations using PowerPoint. At one time, you know, we used to just put a bunch of slides together in a tray and show them with a projector on a screen. But that kind of limited things to just an image. I remember at a convention we held in Morgantown in '98, a friend of mine actually had slides with text written on them, and ooh, that was really something different at that point. But now with PowerPoint, you can combine text and images, as well as a bunch of other things for a creative and interesting presentation. So I want to get into a bit of that. And of course, with PowerPoint, you also have, you also need to know about images and putting those in and manipulating them. So I'm going to start with some PowerPoint tips and then go to photo manipulation tips and then back to PowerPoint here. So, yeah, you guys should all be able to see this screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the basic PowerPoint intro, and it's basically a blank piece of paper. You've got a couple fields here where you can add text. You can also make the background a different color by right-clicking and formatting background to be solid fill. Over on the right here, you've got various colors you can choose. You can do a gradient, and you can change the gradient using sliders and such, as well as other opportunities here, transparency of the gradient and the brightness too. And that can end up being a template for the whole presentation. I do that simply by going to the left and clicking on the box, hitting a copy. You can copy by doing Control-C on your keyboard, or you can right-click and hit copy using your mouse. And then you just hit paste, which is Control-V. Whoops, maybe I didn't save it. Huh. Oh, I know what I did. Yeah, you can paste it by hitting Control-V on the keyboard or pasting with the mouse. But one thing I didn't do is over here on the right, there we go. This button down here is really important. Apply to all. You can see everything on the left all of a sudden picked up the gradient that I set for the first one. So every slide after that has that as the background. So we're going to unclick that. No, we can't unclick it. We'd have to just delete those. Another thing you can do is there are templates you can use under the design tab on the menu at the top for various kinds of image presentations. And there's a bunch as you go through this menu up here at the top. You can just click through and see some of the things that are available. I used one for our show and tell presentations a while back and just have kept using that. There it is right there. You know, kind of looking like a stage with a wood floor and just a blank background there. Now your fill info on the right here, I don't know if you can do much with it. Oh yeah, you can do a little bit with it in order to add some more or not. It's easy to overdo this. It's really easy to overdo this. So this is something that you could do a little bit of, but remember, you want it to focus. Your presentation should focus on what you want to convey. So that's going to be key. And it's your combination of text and image on your slides that will work things to convey what you want to say in your presentation. So keep that in mind. Background and format and everything can deviate, or can distract, I should say, from what you want to say, your content. I mentioned keyboard shortcuts. These are the ones that I use the most. Let's go to a big screen here. And this is mainly for PCs. I know there's some similar ones for Macs, but I don't know exactly what they are. But I use these.
The Mac just uses the command key.
That's right, the command key.
Which is either side of the space bar.
Right. And with the same letters, Brian?
Yes.
And they do the same thing. Control-C or Command-C for copy, V for paste, X for cut, and Z for undo. I find Z to be really, really, really helpful a lot of the times, because I'll put something in and then it won't work, and I'll just hit Control-Z and back out of it. Now, as we move on here, graphics are, of course, a big part of it. And there are several graphics programs or photo manipulation programs. These are the two of the most common. Microsoft Paint is standard on Windows machines. It's found in your on your tool selection on your menu under P for paint. Originally, it was buried further down on Windows Tools under W, but I noticed on Windows 11 and I think on Windows 10 that it's now under P. Another thing you might have, you may not realize it, Photoshop Elements. It's not necessarily on your computer, but for a while there, actually for about a decade, there was a CD of Photoshop Elements that often came when you bought a printer. So if you bought a printer and you are interested in this, you may want to check around in your excess software stuff and see if you've got Photoshop Elements, because it's a handy program for doing some basic stuff. And that's what we're going to really get into here is just the basics, okay? You can go deep dive on this stuff, trust me. You can also take community college classes in some of these programs to do better. And those can be interesting. But for basic things, Microsoft Paint, Photoshop Elements, they can do quite a bit right there at your fingertips.
Photoshop Elements is still available, by the way.
Okay.
It's like $70 at Best Buy.
All right. What's the Mac equivalent of Microsoft Paint there, Brian?
I don't know that there is one. I use graphic converter instead of Photoshop because it's a lot cheaper. But I don't know of a replacement for Paint itself.
I know in Photoshop, or sorry, with a Mac, it's not a PowerPoint, but it's isn't it a keynote presentation in PowerPoint?
Well, I happen to own Office, so I have PowerPoint, but the Mac version of PowerPoint is Keynote.
Yeah.
And I've actually had some users when I was at Vanderbilt use some of the Keynote templates, graphic templates, and import those into PowerPoint because they look nicer.
Of course. So there are options, you know, if you have a Mac and not a PC, there are other similar things there, possibly currently on the unit you're working on. Some other programs that are out there, Affinity Photo I picked that up a while back, and it's a robust piece of software. I picked it up because they had a really, really sweet deal on a 3-pack of the photo program, publisher program, and an illustrator program from Affinity, all 3 for $75. And that was really, really a steal. Currently, Photoshop and an Adobe suite, it's available by subscription only. There are older versions that are floating around out there, available on eBay and other areas, where you can just get certain things. But I think they're still going to be pricey and possibly more than $75 for the Affinity package. GIMP is another program. This is a free download that you can find out there for graphic image manipulation. And a couple other options. Adobe Lightroom is out there. I think some of that is coming out free now from Adobe. And sometimes there's something that came with your camera. If you've got a digital camera, you may have some software that came with it, again, on a disk or an extra download after you've registered your camera that you may be able to use. I know I've got a Nikon digital SLR, and there's a decent Nikon package that came with the camera. So those are all possibilities that some of them you may already have available to you for photo manipulation. Now, one thing that's important when you work in Photoshop, or when you're doing a PowerPoint, I should say, is I try to keep all the images for presentation in the same folder. So that's what we're looking at right here. These are all the images that I'm going to mess around with in the presentation, and some of them will be going into the PowerPoint, which is in the upper left corner here. Let me do these bigger so you can see them better. So I try to do this because sometimes when I go to an event, an RPM or convention, and I have to do a presentation, it's easier to just grab the folder and paste it into a jump drive to take with you in order to use on the computer at the event or with a laptop that you take. So, and I've found the PowerPoint works really, really well when the images are close by. Now, there are many different image sizes, and a couple of these here, for instance, this one here is a TIFF image, and you could probably just barely read the information here. It's a large image. It's 137 megabytes. Now, you can put that into a PowerPoint, but it may slow down your presentation. What you want to do is have a decent enough photo, but have it compressed a bit. And that's what we have over here to the right, which is 202 kilobytes, which is pretty easy to load up compared to 137 megabytes.
Well,
So
there's other differences there too.
Right.
The first one's a TIFF,
Yes.
and the second one is a JPEG, and then the first one's 6,000 something pixels and the second one is 2. So it's,
Yeah.
There's more than just the size of the file there.
Right. But you can take a good TIFF like this and create a very usable JPEG that loads up easier. And this is the size I use on my web work with my own blog and also the Resin Car Works blog. And these work great because the 2,000 pixel width for an image, that's more than 20 inches across. Because most of these are 72 dots per inch. So that's bigger than most of your screens. And what a lot of people want to see in a photo is the detail. They want to see it quickly. They want to see it easily. So posting a TIFF file of this size for my blog might take a very long time for some people to open up, whereas the JPEG will open quickly and still be a really nice size to see the detail they want to see. Now up here, we have a couple of original images from an iPhone. Let me click on that. This is one of the first ones I took of the latest resin kit. And there's something wrong with this photo. We can zoom in a bit. It's blurry. It's not in focus. So I always take 2 or 3 photos with my iPhone because usually it will concentrate on a spot and focus, and oftentimes improve the exposure too. So that's a little sharper than the previous one. Now, when you're looking at photos and want to edit photos, you've got to determine what do you want to, what's the focus? What's the point of the photograph? And then, you import this into a photo manipulation software and you create the image you want to use. And that's what this is here. Now, let me go through a couple of things. Let me show you Affinity. All right. We will open that same image from my desktop. Here's the one. This is the original. And the other thing is, when you mess around with the original, either make a copy first and play with that, or as soon as you do some sort of change on this, save it as a different file. you always want to keep your original image intact. And that's really important, because I've seen some people mess around with the original image and then save it as a different name, or just hit save, and it's changed forever. You can't go back. So with this, we have a number of tools on the left. And this is similar to a lot of programs where you're going to have a toolbar on the left. And some of these tools are the same. So we can pick crop. And I like Affinity because they give you these hash marks here to help you crop. We can just bring that down, go to the opposite corner, and move it up. Notice the photo did not become distorted at all. That's a key, because there's some crops where if you try to do this, you've got to hold down the shift bar to maintain the ratio. And once you like what you see, just double click on it. Bingo. There's what you're looking at. Now, I'm going to do this. Well, I'll do that in a minute. Some other tools are over here on the right. And these can alter the look of the photo. Exposure is one that I like to use. And Affinity gives you a couple different presets. That one I just clicked is minus a step. This one's plus a step. I like to hit the default because it's the original, and then slowly, carefully nudge the slider up just a bit. Usually I just need a bit on this to change from what's there. And I recommend playing with this stuff as much as possible so you can see what happens. You can also change the opacity of what happens. So, the changes are not as extreme when you shift the slider around. I'm going to delete the suggestions there. Another thing I use is curves. And this is something I learned from Tony Custer. They do this a lot at Kalmbach before to prep a photo for the magazine. They move these endpoints in order to get a better photo, to clarify, just to tweak the photo some for the mag. And again, you can mess around with this as much as possible, and I encourage that so that you can see. And you can also move the box, which I should have done first, so that you can see what's happening with your work in real time. Now, what I've found is that staying closer to the red line helps. And you can add endpoints. You can add points all along here in order to adjust what you see there. Let's hit merge on that. So we'll keep it a second. Brightness and contrast is another area that I often play around with. And again, these are easy sliders to adjust brightness and contrast. Sometimes I'll drop contrast down and brightness up, and you get a little bit of a different look here. And again, you can also adjust the opacity of what the tools do.
Eric, with those
Yes.
curves, what exactly was it you were adjusting? Color or brightness or?
The curve adjusts some of the photo saturation.
Like for that graph at the bottom, what does that represent? The graph with the two big mountains,
Yeah,
what is that?
I don't know.
Oh,
I've played with
Okay.
it, and I know it affects several aspects of the photo, especially color-wise, which we'll see in another photo here soon. But I don't know I don't exactly know what this data is. Some of it's up here in this histograph above for the different parts of the color spectrum there too.
I guess that's volume of different aspects of the spectrum.
Yeah, it has to do with the photosaturation
Yeah,
of what's there too. I mean, we can bring this down and notice how it changes. But if we take it up, you know, it looks really washed out.
there's two good peaks. I guess there's a lot of blue and a lot of red. Not so much of some other colors or something. Whoa.
I don't know if these are representative of a specific color. That's up in the top histograph here, which I haven't played around with too much. I try to shoot a lot of my work under lighting that's already set. And I also check the white balance, set the white balance on my camera before I shoot photos too.
So you just move that line and eyeball what you like.
Yeah, I'm looking for a little more sharpness or depth in, you know, the details so that what I want to talk about comes through better. And there's also over on the left with the toolbar, there's you know, zoom function tools where you can, you know, see what this is actually doing a little closer in on your topic there. I'm going to delete what I did there, but there are a whole host of things here to play with. A lot of them I am still learning on and have hardly even touched.
If you want to change the color, there's one there that was called color balance.
Yeah, there's a white balance one here too.
That allows you to drag the individual CMYK bars.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that. And you said there was a color one. There it is, color balance. Yeah. And this is where you can increase the amount of red or cyan. You can go either way on these color scales here. And again, whenever you're doing this, play around, because that's one of the best ways to learn this stuff. You know, that affects midtones. Let's see, let's change this to shadows, and we can play with the shadows some and see what happens there. And you're going to create an abomination at first. I can guarantee that. But you're also going to learn what you can fine tune on some of this stuff if you so choose. And with this, it's easy to delete everything you just said. So, and each of the photo manipulation programs, more of the high-end ones like Photoshop, each of those that I've played with have that kind of in-depth kind of adjustments. Now, let's save this. So in Affinity, we go up here to File. We have to export. It's already picked as a JPEG. It's just under 18 pixels wide. Let me set that for 2000 and export. And we will say this is, let's see, that was example 2. We'll do this as final 1. Now I could have hit just save, but then I would have lost my original, right? And that's not what you want to do. In other programs, especially Photoshop, when you go here to save, there's save, save as, and there's a function for save for web, which does almost exactly what I just did as an export here. It's when I exported this photo, I saved it, I compressed it a bit, and then set the width parameters to my preference. that I enjoy, that I like using on my website. And there are times, like I just did, where I will set the parameters just slightly bigger than the edited photo. I have not noticed any sort of difference between, the slightly larger photo and something else that I had done previously, that where I shrunk it down from like 2,500 to 2,000. So we can drop out of that. And see, this is asking me, this is the original file name. It's asking me if I want to save this. And I don't, because I've modified it, right? So I'm going to say no, because I don't want to screw around with the original. We can open up something else. Let's do this one here. This is that TIFF file. And there are a few things here that I want to adjust. First off, no matter how hard I try, I can't get my camera level well. And we got to figure out what we want as level. So I can go in here as crop and move a couple things. Then if I go down to a corner, watch my pointer down here. It's going to change, and I can grab the photo and I can rotate it a bit. And we've got these great lines that come in where I can set up a line over something in the photo that's vertical, and bingo. I've got something that looks a little better than what I started with, except down here in the left, we now have part of the background, which is nothing. So we've got to move this in a bit, and same thing at the top. Got to move this down and see a little bit up here in the upper right. Move this in a bit. And then double click, and we've got a straightened photo. Photoshop has a similar tool. It's a rotate tool, and you can do fine work on that too. And
So
then
does a graphic converter.
so does what?
Graphic converter.
Okay, yeah. A lot of these tools are standard. You just have to find out where they are, because they aren't necessarily all in the same spot on each of the programs. So let's go to curves on this. Actually, I want to see levels. So there's a few different, oops. Yeah, there's a few different adjustments there for levels. This is similar to curves. It's not quite the same, but I like the fact that with curves, I've got a histogram to work with. See, there's a gap over here on the right. So we want to move that in a bit. So, and down to the red line so that it's, on point there. Same with the one on the left. And this is something that what Tony Custer mentioned. They always try to move these endpoints into where they're touching the histograph in order to produce the photos you see in model railroader and trains and other mags too. And then if we mess around with this, it changes things, whether we're on the upper right side or the lower left side. It changes some of the saturation and some of the contrast and brightness. So we'll just leave it there like that. Hit merge. Now, one thing that kind of bugs me is I can't see much of the board and batten weathering on this one structure. So we can zoom in a bit here. Now we see it fine there, but we want to enhance it a little bit. And there are tools here that replicate old-time photography tricks. There's a dodge brush and a burn brush, where to dodge means you want to remove some of the light that's coming through. To burn means you want to burn in more of the image. So we'll hit burn, and up at the top, this is similar to a lot of programs I messed with. You can adjust the size of the brush, the opacity of the brush. and so on and so forth. So we can hit this and just give it some strokes here. We're burning in a little bit. And you can also just go like this, you know, like you're messing around with a marker if you want. Remember Control Z? I did too much there. Oops, Control Z. Because I had my mouse button held down the whole time I was, you know, scribbling like this. So that was one, you know, that was one command in a way. So Control Z, I can undo all the stuff that I just did there. And again, I learned a lot of this just by playing around with it. So we've done that, and we can zoom out. And that's the other thing I use a lot is the Control plus and Control minus keys to zoom in and zoom out. So we've got a little bit more texture on that. Looks a little better, I think. Now you can tell that it's a wood front building. The focus, though, of course, is on the freight cars in the front. There are commands to sharpen an image too, which I have not found yet on Affinity. I think it's a filter. There we go. Yeah, it's a filter on the Photoshop ones. And oddly enough, it's the unsharp mask that I have found can affect the photograph the most as far as sharpness. We'll zoom in a bit on this Canadian Pacific car, and we'll go back to bring on sharp mask up again. And it's these sliders here that can affect the overall photo, usually. The radius, this is the radius of the sharpness. There we go. So usually you want a smaller radius, and sharpness you usually don't necessarily want to do too extreme, because then it becomes more of a cartoon in a way. And then threshold is another aspect that has, it's more of a fine tuning element that I've found. So that's something else that helps when you've got just a slight softness to it, to sharpen something up. Cancel there. We'll zoom out. So we've rotated this a bit. We've adjusted levels. We've burned some stuff in. Now it's time to export and save again. This was a TIFF file before, but again, I want to save it for the web. So I've got to export, and it's already set up for JPEG. I can choose the file type here, and also from the various types on top, like a PNG file or PSD file. Not all these will open up in certain programs. I can also save it as a PDF, but I'm going to save it as a JPEG, and I can set the quality here on this slider. And I've set it up for medium quality. And note, it's the original, it's close to the original size of the TIFF, which was 6,000 pixels across. So we're going to reduce that to 2,000, and we export. And of course, we got to give it a new name, right? So we'll give it Final 2. So we're done with that. Now, someone mentioned black and white. Got a couple black and white photos here that we can play with. This is a historic photo from the Lackawanna Company photographers, which I find a lot of these to be just simply fascinating. This was taken in October of 1926 in East Binghamton, New York. One of the first things I would do with this is to remove the elements that I don't have an interest in. So we'll tighten this up a bit. And I can focus more on what's going on here. With this photograph, I find the curves tool to be most helpful. See how the mountains are all different on this one? So we take this in like this, take this in like this, and then we can adjust this in order to bring out some of the detail in the back and the foreground, really. So we hit merge. Let's take a look in deeper here. There's usually a hand tool. This is at the top up here in Photoshop. I think it's right beside the zoom one, where you could just grab something and move it left and right. I'm fortunate that these are online in a really, really nice size JPEG. Oh, and there's something I never noticed before. There's a nickel plate boxcar in the background there. But when you clean it up a little bit, you can see so much more. You can see a signage on the sign in the background, and you can have more clarification on the different freight cars that are in the foreground. It's a lot less murky, isn't it? And we can also do a little bit more work by messing around with maybe the burn brush. Looks like a ball field in the background there, doesn't it? So you can really clean up some photographs quite a bit using some of the basic tools that you find in many of these programs. Now, this graininess back here, you really can't get rid of that. We're zoomed in pretty far. Remember, we already cropped this, and then we adjusted for the curves, and now we're zoomed in pretty far. These glass plate negatives are good, but getting solid detail this far into a photograph, no, you're not going to get a lot of that, because the photographer was distant as it was to the foreground things, but we can at least see some more info than what we saw on the original. And these are simple adjustments that we just did in a few minutes here that bring out extra info from one photograph. So we can zoom out. We can also mess around with exposure. I should have done this first to adjust some of the brightness there. That actually helps it a bit. I prefer to go a little lighter on some photos, especially black and white historical photos, because I think it draws the eye into the scene a little better and makes people want to explore more. So we can save this. You can also, for instance, crop out another portion for a separate photo. But remember, it's not going to be that big because we're already cropped down from the original. And it's going to be basically almost a little larger than a thumbnail if we just want to do the creamery in the background here with the boxcars. So we will, again, export. Still a nice size, almost 3,500 pixels. Since it's black and white, sometimes I would put this at 2,500. Especially something like this with a lot of detail, but we're going to stick with our usual 2000 on this. And export, and again, another name. So we click the last file we did, since these are all going to be related for our PowerPoint, and make it Final 3. So these are just some of the simple things you can do with the Affinity program. Again, Photoshop is similar. That it's got a slightly different layout and positioning of some tools. Let's no. So let's bring in one photo under Photoshop so that you can see some of the differences. This is a Photoshop suite, an Adobe suite that I bought over 15 years ago. And the last update was a while back. It still works for me, but it doesn't.
I had Photoshop 5,
Yeah.
and when I got my new Mac Pro, it killed it.
That's a bummer. But I bought the Affinity suite because, damn, $75. That was cheap. And I've used it quite a bit and learned a lot with it. But I still keep the Photoshop one around. So here we are with the raw file. Okay, this is on the club in Morgantown, West Virginia. This is kind of a dark image, so we want to mess around with this. I immediately go to levels. Does this look familiar? With the histogram like this? So we can adjust these endpoints, and then we can adjust the middle one too. And we have a starkly different photo. And again, there are different elements that you can adjust with the levels. For instance, there's a main overall adjustment down at the bottom. I prefer to use these three sliders underneath the histogram in order to really pull out some extra, a better appearance. So we hit OK. We'll crop. Yep, see, I forgot how to crop here. It's been a while. Don't crop. With this, I've got to hold down the Shift button and then click on a corner in order to get the crop field going. Now, once it's there, I can also reposition it and then change some of the crop area. And then bingo, we've got a new photo. Let's see if a unsharp mask will help at all. Probably not. See how that's gotten really kind of, as you push the radius, it really deforms some of the detail in the background. So this is an element that you want to use carefully. Again, the more you play around with it, the more you can see what you can pull out of something too. So we'll hit OK. Oh, also you can preview this or not, which I find the preview really helpful. So we hit OK, and we're happy with it. We will save it for the web. See, there's over on the file, the menu here, you come down and save for web. This is also in Photoshop Elements. It's telling me that, hey, this photo is way too big for the web. Do I want to continue? Well, of course I want to continue, because here I can set the parameters. And that's under this tab for image size. See, it's currently 3,500 pixels wide, so we go to 2,000 again. It's already set up as a JPEG medium in the fields up here. So that's decent. We can apply. Here's what we're looking at. This is the compressed file. This is what we were working with before on the left. The right one's a compressed file. So, and you can go 4 up on this too. That shows different different quality of the photo, and gives you an estimate of download of 69 seconds at 28.8 kilobytes per second. We're going to keep that one. We hit save up at the top here, top right. Go back to the original folder because we want to use this in our PowerPoint. We will save it as Final 4. And we'll drop this out. Again, it's going to ask, hey, do you want to save this original file with the changes you made? No, we do not. We don't want to mess up the original file. So we click no. And we can drop out of Photoshop, drop out of Affinity, and go back here to PowerPoint, and begin to enter, some of our photos. You don't usually need 2 text blocks at this point. So I usually get rid of one. And I might want to keep one for information on the photo. So I'll put it to the side. Now, to insert a photo, we go to the top here, the menu bar, insert pictures from this device. And we've got to go again back to our original folder. There it is on the desktop. And we go down to the ones we marked final, right? So there's one, and we insert. Now, if we want to put text beside it, we can drag this over to the left. We can also make this a different size. But that kind of defeats the point of, making the presentation to show people the details. So I prefer to, have a large photo and a maybe text, maybe not. I oftentimes just like to talk about things. There we go. And we can adjust, again, just like in Word, you can adjust all sorts of elements of this as far as text size. Don't go too small on the text, because if you're showing this on a screen, some of the text can be hard to read. And I prefer having minimal text on a slide in general. We're going to hit Control S to save our work. Another thing that is here, see down at the bottom here where it says notes? If we click on that, we can add notes. And these can show up for you to read or reference when, if I spell Westerfield correctly, when you do a presentation. You see them here, and we can expand that a bit. See, there's a lot of room for notes here. Again, I'll save, but there's a when you do the presentation, you can also do a presentation view. I think it's more up on the top menu portion here, which I can't really reference well because I see the I see the zoom functions up there. So, but that's basically.
When I tried doing the presentation view, going through this PDF or the PowerPoint that I was telling you about, I'm going to present this week. It showed the next slide and the notes. Unless I have a second screen, I don't think I can keep my notes from being shared in the Zoom window.
Huh. That's interesting.
I think if you click on the presentation down there in the lower right-hand corner,
Yeah.
so it looks like a screen, you may be able to go to Yeah, presenter view.
There it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
See,
I've
that's
got,
what, when I share my screen, it shares all of that.
oh, okay. Huh, wonder why. We were inserting photos. So let's go to another slide here and insert another. Again, insert pictures, this device. What's really nice is usually once you pick a photo from a folder, it goes back to the same folder. So this is why I recommend having a folder with the photos for your presentation, you know, set with your PowerPoint file. So we insert, see how this came in smaller? We can pull the corners, and this is Photoshop will, you know, you can pull corners and it will maintain the ratio, which is really nice. And then when you go to position it, there are these marks that show up that indicate when it's right on point vertically and horizontally. It was there a minute ago. Actually, I'll do this. So we're trying to center this. See the red dashed lines that have come in?
Yep.
That's an indication that your photo is centered now in the field. And again, I prefer to have the photo take up as much room as possible, like that. You can also crop in PowerPoint. Notice up at the top right, there's a crop button, and you can, you know, tweak it a bit more to make it work well for the focus of your presentation too. Once you set the parameters, hit crop again, and then I like to make it fit the space better. Now I want to add another slide. I can hit new slide here. There's also, see, when it comes up there as new slide, there's also a keyboard shortcut, Control M. So you can either hit the button or do Control M to add another slide right afterwards.
You can also select a new slide that's blank and doesn't have those boxes in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
There it is. Yep, you're right. Thank you.
you're welcome.
I learned that. See, I'm still learning this stuff too. So as many of these as I've done, there's always something new to learn. See, this one takes up a nice bit of the space. You can also put a text box over this if you want. There's text box. And again, whoops, you can adjust the size of the text, the placement of the text, all that with the tools available right here on your tool menus and stuff. Now there's already some text down here from the original photographer. Sometimes that's not as easy to read, so adding something extra can be a little bonus there. And we'll insert one last picture. No, we're gonna insert a slide first, don't we? Now I inserted one I didn't want, and it's easy to just hit the delete button after you've highlighted the box over in the left. Insert picture. We'll do our last one that we did. Bingo, again, a nice size. Now, something I did earlier when I showed you the graphics programs, notice how the lines are added, but everything else stays in place. That's because I built this slide first, then copied it a couple times, and then removed the elements I didn't want. So I do this fairly frequently when I want to mention several bullet points, but I don't want to put everything on the screen at once. When we started, I talked about what's commonly available, and then, you know, some other things that are out there and some other possibilities. So, you know, it's like you can control the pacing of your presentation, you know, by doing just a simple kind of copy and paste, and then deleting what you don't want and then rearranging. And you can rearrange these slides very easily. So we've gone from there to keyboard shortcuts back to graphic programs. You just grab one and then move it where you want. And again, you can put a title here. Some people put a header and a footer that are on every slide. I find sometimes that gets in the way of some of the other information that they're conveying. I try to keep some things really simple and to follow the story that I want to tell. Even though I've just used 4 unrelated images here, other than the fact that we messed around with them in Photoshop or Affinity Photo to crop them and make them look better. That's basically it. You're telling a story. That's the basics of it. And you build your presentation upon the photos you've taken that tells your story. And then, of course, we go to the final presentation, and it looks good on the full screen. One other thing I forgot to mention, and I only discovered this recently when I was messing around with our show and tell stuff, when we started doing that. See up here at the top, there's something called transitions. Well, this adds animation. You can add several different transitions to your slides. I try to minimize these because, you know, usually I do one maybe at the beginning or at the end, or do a simple kind of fade from one thing to another. Usually with our presentations, I often do one of these like after someone's group of photos. So we do that. We'll hit save. We go to presentation, and bingo. You can see, you know, what happens with the animation.
If you're going to use a transition, use the same one throughout.
Or that too, right?
It's just really distracting if you have, you know, a lot of different transitions.
Right. Yeah, I find that the simple fade from one to another to be, you know, pretty helpful. Or
When it
pretty,
was chopped up like a checkerboard, I think it just is distracting.
yeah. Yeah, and that's why I do it only between sections, between the individual's photos on our show and tell section.
Yeah, the simple fade, I think, is a lot better.
You don't like this one?
No, I think it's distracting from the story you're telling.
Right. And again, that's another point. Maybe this is a way to end it or to begin, as Brian said. But yeah, it's think about the flow of your story, what you want to convey, and all that.
A little bit like some TV advertisement I see. It looks like some young guy who's really hopped up on graphics is trying to show off all his tools instead of sell his product.
Right. Well, yeah, you see that in some small market TV stations, that's for sure. So does anyone have any questions?
Nope, that was interesting.
Is this one of our clinics for October?
No. No, not at all. I wasn't
Just
really,
got added to the schedule.
yeah, I wasn't really planning on presenting a clinic, because I've found that usually it's when you're the one that's coordinating most of it, you've got like zero time to really
Yes.
focus on a presentation. I'm going to show one last slide. I forgot about this. These are folders of all my presentations that I've built. So I've got it under a main folder called presentations. So any one of these, I can copy over to a thumb drive and take with me to an event to do a presentation off-site. But as you can see, a lot of these have the images right there, the Photoshop file right there. And I usually go with the PPT, the older Photoshop file name, because I don't know what kind of computer's waiting for me at the event. I've seen folks show up with the latest Photoshop file format, and it won't work on an older computer. And they get pretty upset. So those are, little things. Sometimes I have a separate folder here with all the images in it. So it's, and some of these, like this one here, this one's a website that I built. Originally was, I was more familiar with HTML. So I built a presentation based on a website and how that functions, which was okay, but there were quirks in it that didn't work that great. So I forced myself into Photoshop. So there. If any of you are building one of these, and need some help, drop me an email. Happy to help you put something together. If you got a question about, formatting a photo or something, just let me know.
Okay.
Anyone have anything else to bring up or discuss?
Well, I enjoyed it. I got here late. I didn't see the beginning.
Well, I'm recording it. In fact, I'm going to stop recording right now.